Hi, this is Sean from Centric Wealth Advisory. This is part 4 of the retirement planning template. This is the recommendation section of the retirement planning template. And also I'm just going to go through the fund calculator, which is a bonus feature I added. This now is looking at the recommendations based on the provisions that Joe Soap currently has. You've gone through the first, second, and third step. Now I'm going to go through the recommendations quickly just to show you how one would address this. So we established under the comparison of funds that because his compulsory money was going to be maxing out at age 85 and he has to have money provide until he's 90, which means that he will have 25 years, so 19, 65 plus 25 is 90. You will have a shortfall relative to the cost of living at that stage, which I'm just going to zoom in over here, of 5 years. So when he's 90, the money must be depleted or he must pass away. And if there's any balance in the compulsory funds, they'll be passed on to nominated beneficiaries. But in this case, depending on the cost of living, he needs to have provisions for that, which we'll then address. We did briefly go through the current provisions and we did one of two scenarios very quickly. We changed this to 25,000 using the same growth after fees, and that solved this issue. Or we changed this to 10% and it solved the issue. But under recommendations, sometimes a bit more complicated. This section here is just pulling through information from the goals, which is 65, 305,000 is the income per month. It needs to last 25 years. The capital required was 51. Really taking this from the provisions, which is 52 million, taking the 2/3 of the compulsory, which is the annuity from Angray, taking the full amount from 91, 52 million is the total. Total surplus shortfall is 1.3 million and capital required to meet 13. Where's that coming from over there? Okay, fair enough. This shortfall over here is essentially this. Because what we need to do, see if that is correct, 5, some sort of calculation I've done. I've calculated what one would need. So this 1.139, that current provision surplus is coming from, just going to show you quickly. 1.139 is coming from there. However, total required to meet income refer to the comparison of funds to determine the income from the compulsory and voluntary funds are in line, as we've established over here. They aren't. And that 6% is automatically putting through from whatever amount we use. So let's say we choose 64%, we'll make it 5%. Sorry, escalated 5%, apologies. Just going to change that back and do 5, and the income, let's make it 5. Make this 5. Let's make this 6. Make this 5. And then that will then pull through as 5 over there. So everything is predetermined, built in for you. Let's put it back over there. Okay. So the recommendations is telling us that based on a 6% escalation per year, it's going to have a shortfall to about 13 million. So the first calculator is if we had a shortfall here. Let's say there was a shortfall where this was, let's go and show you quickly what I mean. We're going to say the requirements were 30 years. Then there would be a shortfall of 3 million. So now, based on the options, he's got a monthly or quarterly payment, annual payment with or without escalation, and he's got a once-off lump sum. Those are the two options he has. So the one that's easiest would be to make up 3 million Rand monthly payments. Let's just work on escalation of 6%, years to retirement. Okay, well, essentially whatever we put here, we actually need to put into the provisions afterwards. We need to actually add this as a fund to technically see how it works. In other words, whatever recommendations you make, if you want to see if it works, you just go and hypothetically insert it over here as an additional fund, but you don't have to do that right now. You can just do it here. It's a growth rate of 9, escalation of 6. He would need to put away an additional 2,003 Rand rounded off, which is not bad. So if you wanted to make provisions for an additional 5 years, this is how much you need to put away per month. It's 2,002. And that will then solve the problem. Otherwise, if you made annual payments, you'll need to make annual payments of 32,000 a year. So it's 32,821 a year. And then lastly, to lump sum, if you had 337,155 invested over 23 years at 10%. Obviously, I've just left these defaulted here. Maybe it's 6%, could be less. It is, yeah. Okay. So let's go back and put it to what it was, because I want to show you the section over here. Now, obviously, because I've modeled it differently, just look at the 5-year problem. Because we said you need to make the money last. We already said it was 25 years, so it's 90. So now I'll be saying the money needs to last till 95. So we don't want that. Don't want to complicate it too much. We'll put it back to what it was. So you've got a surplus on face value. However, because we've got the difference, as we've mentioned over here, between 85 and 90, we now see that it's 13 million. So he needs to put a payment per month of 10,000. So that obviously is quite a lot. Now, the 10,000 is working on 8% growth. Let's say it was 10 and 6. It's 7.6. 2 annual payments. Let's work on, say, 10, 6. It's going to be 92,000 a year. And the lump sum, if you get a 10% return over 23 years, you need to put a 1.4 million. So obviously, solution will probably be going towards the 7,600. But however, we've already established by playing around that if you change this to 25, under the comparison, it would last exactly till 90. So this section here was quite difficult to model. You can see now it's naught. It was quite difficult to get this to work because I had to take values and then discount it back to present terms. It was not easy to do. But as you can see on face value right over here, sorry, revisions, if you increase his retirement annuity to 25,000, or if we increased his returns to 10,000 after fees, that would then solve the problem and you'd have a naught. So this section here under recommendations, this section here would be more around just understanding the shortfalls over here. And then either do one of two things: adjusting your existing investment. Now, as I said before, if you contribute towards a retirement fund and there's non-deductible tax deductions that will benefit you later on in terms of Section 10C of the Income Tax Act, that's not important in terms of retirement planning. You need to make sure you've got provisions. And then secondly, firstly, either increase the current contributions or you take out a whole new investment. And that's where having a financial planner is quite important. In this case, I think the solution would be to aim for a higher return. So if it's 8% and you go and say, well, let's maybe invest more aggressively. Obviously, bear in mind, it is Regulation 28 of the Pensions Fund Act. You can't just go straight into offshore. So you might say, well, what happens if I get 10% over here? How would that impact my calculations? So let's go back. It might be a better solution, and it is. So you would leave your unit trust, but you would put it maybe into an offshore investment. So now instead of getting 8% off the fees, you get a 10%. And as a result of that compounded, you would have a voluntary fund last longer. You can see it's quite substantial, which is the 12% growth in retirement, because it's starting off at 10% after fees. Obviously, I haven't put fees in here, but we're saying between now and retirement of 65, we're getting a 10% after fees. So that could be an offshore investment via a unit trust. And as a result of that, with their 6% escalations, you've got 21 million, so it's 76. The 76, taking the 76, we are taking 1/3 from the retirement annuity, so it drops down to 37, plus that gives you the 58. We've already worked out the provisions need to be 51, so you've got a 7 million surplus. That 7 million surplus is then going to be correlated into over here. And as a result of that, when you do the comparison, just so if he outlives 90, he's got 3 more years before he has an issue, which I think is a bit more realistic than him not having enough money between 85 and 90. But at the same time, if he's between 90 and 93, I would imagine his living standards by that stage, he'd be in frail care. I don't think he'd be having the same sort of hobbies or living expenses at that stage because of his condition and his age. But the point I'm making is this just shows you how to make those calculations and those decisions. Obviously, you can play around with all these values over here. But the point is, the first thing you want to do is you want to first establish your goal, current provisions, how that's going to play out to retirement, comparison of funds. If there's a shortfall, you either tweak your current investments in terms of the contributions or the potential growth, or you take out an additional investment with the guidance of a financial planner, and then you monitor your portfolio on an annual basis. And of course, obviously, if your retirement goals are, substantial, in other words, much higher than 80, or you haven't got adequate enough provisions in your retirement, when you do your own scenario, it's going to play out. And you're going to see whether you've got a surplus or shortfall. And when you play it out between the voluntary and compulsory funds, in this case, we worked on a default weighting of 79-21. You can see how that plays out in retirement. And then you can start making decisions beforehand so that you know what is coming at your date of retirement. The biggest issue people face is they get to retirement and they ask the question, okay, so what do I do? What is coming my way? And by that stage, we have to advise them and say, well, you haven't got enough provisions. So you're going to have to max out your savings. It's going to impact your life dramatically. And even then might not be enough. In this case, because this client has made enough provisions at 42, he's in a position to make decisions that may or may not impact him as much. In this case, just by making an adjustment to his fund structuring, his underlying portfolio with his unit trust, he's now put a more aggressive return into it. So he's moved it into a more aggressive fund, and that can be through the guidance of a financial planner. That's where that'll solve his problem. But not everyone's in the same position as Joe Soap. And that's why this calculator is quite useful for educational purposes, as I've mentioned before. You must always speak to a financial planner and discuss your current position. But this tool is just give you guidance in terms of how a financial planner would actually put together a plan for you. And this is a universal thing. Apart from the compulsory fund ruling, which is a South African tax law, which is 2.5% and 17.5%. Our Pensions Fund Act obviously works differently to different structurings in the US and the United Kingdom, as an example. They have their own rules. Ours is saying you lie between 2.5% and 17.5%. And that alternative for Joe Soap, just as throwing a spanner in the works, is Joe could at some point move his money from a living annuity into a life annuity. There are pros and cons to that. If he goes into a life annuity, at that stage, the annuity rates will be calculated based on his life expectancy, and that money will be guaranteed where you either have an escalation or not have an escalation on that income. But regardless of market conditions, that money is guaranteed. The only downside is that when you invest in a life annuity, you can't access that money again. That money basically forfeits when you die. There could be some guarantees in there. If you've got a spouse or beneficiary you need to leave money to that is financially dependent on you. However, ideally, you want to have a living annuity where money can be passed on to your spouse or other financial dependents when Joe passes away, which in this case, you will have provisions from 85 onwards because of his voluntary money. And obviously with his, let's go back to the compulsory funds, when he passes away at 90, you're still going to have 75 million in future terms available that's going to be passed on. And that's quite important because not only does Joe need to make provisions for himself, he also needs to potentially make provisions for loved ones he leaves behind that may also be dependent on the income of 80,000. This could be for two people or whatever. Or you can do separate plans for husband and wife as an alternative. Anyway, hope this video has added some value to those who are just trying to understand retirement planning in South Africa a bit better. This template is something that you can use and update annually, play around with it, add things into it, see how it will work, and then speak to a financial planner about putting in place a solid retirement plan that you can commit towards, because unfortunately, this is something you need to do your whole life, and then review your portfolio at least once a year so that you can ensure that you're still on track with regards to your retirement goals. If you have any questions, you're welcome to drop them in the comment section. This template will be available to download and I'm going to use exactly the same example over here. You can follow along as you have been in the past. The last thing I want to show you quickly is just a fund value calculator. So what this basically is just a bit of a back end formula. It's separate to the calculation over here, but under current provisions, you've got two funds, undergrad 91. This is the future value. Some people might be asking, well, how do I get to the 55.9 million and 21.048? You can go over here, you can choose the fund. So it's undergrad 91. In this case, 91 unit trust. This is going to change it over to undergrad. Times annuity. Here's the funds over here. So you can actually get the reference over here if you need to. We can see the monthly is so frequency is monthly, 20,000. This is the growth rate of 8%, future escalation of 6, 23 years to retirement. It's got a 5 million fund value. All of that is over here. He's got a future value of 29.3 over here, but then you need to add the 26 over here. So you're taking 29 plus 26 gives you 55, because you need to take 5 million adjusted by 23 years with the growth rate we're assuming here, which we've already said is 8%, plus the contributions he's making. So you add the two together, 55. Now, if you were to go and change this to and here, this, by the way, this 55,932 will correlate over here. Just bear in mind, this is a completely separate calculation. That's how I know it works. And then we've got the 91, which is 21.048, 21.048. And this is how that's calculated. And this is just because if you got different payments, obviously the different payments will pull through. Let's just have a look over here. Now we're saying it's annually. Obviously, if you're making annual payments versus monthly, the whole situation completely changes in terms of future values, which is why this template is quite customizable, which is quite nice if you wanted to learn about financial planning. I have defaulted everything to begin mode. I haven't gone into end beginning mode because ideally you want to make contributions at the beginning of the period and not the end. But I do have separate templates if you want to see the impact of between begin and end mode, and frequencies, etc., etc. I've got separate templates. Go to the list of templates, download what you need. But this is how you would calculate it using a time value of money formula to get the future values if you've wanted to know. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I do hope that this has added some value to your learning experience in regards to retirement planning in South Africa. But this is something that I find will help anyone who's young and starting out as a new employee looking to start planning for retirement. This is a nice tool to use to just better understand how it all works. Bye for now, and hope to make a video in the near future. Thanks. Bye.